Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're staging a philosophical showdown between two heavyweights of ethical theory, egalitarianism and prioritarianism. Now, you might think they're on the same team, right? Both seem to want a more equal world. But, as we're about to see, a simple little test case is going to blow that idea wide open and show they have fundamentally different ideas about what equality really means. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with their shared concern for equality, then get right into their core disagreement. After that, we'll run the definitive test, see how each side calculates the outcome, and finally, look at their irreconcilable differences. All right, first things first. Before the main event, we've got to establish the rules of engagement. So let's find some common ground. It turns out, believe it or not, these two theories actually agree on a really fundamental starting principle. So both theories get on board with this idea, the Pagoo-Dalton condition. And honestly, it's pretty straightforward. It just says that if you have a transfer of, say, money or happiness from someone who's better off to someone who's worse off, and the total amount of good stuff stays the same, then the new situation is better. It's more equal. Makes sense, right? A simple transfer to help the less fortunate is a good thing. So far, so good. But, and this is a big but, don't get too comfortable with all this agreement. Just beneath the surface, a really deep disagreement is brewing. It all boils down to why each of them thinks equality is a good thing, and that why leads to a massive clash in their logic. Okay, so here's where they really part ways. For prioritarianism, it's all about the absolute level of a person's well-being. Think of it like this. They look at each person's life as its own separate column in a spreadsheet. You evaluate each person's happiness independently, and then you just add it all up. That's what additively separable means. But for egalitarianism, no way. It's all about the relative comparison. You can't just look at one column. You have to look at how the columns compare to each other. It's the gap between people that matters. And the philosopher John Broome really hits the nail on the head here. He says, look, prioritarians care more about improving someone's well-being the lower it is on its own terms. But egalitarians, they're directly concerned with the comparison, with how one person's life stacks up against another's. This little difference, absolute versus relative, well, it's about to become a very, very big deal. So the question is, how do we really push this disagreement right out into the open? We need something more than just abstract talk. We need a test case, a scenario that leaves absolutely no room for waffling, one that forces both sides to show their true colors. And here it is. Welcome to the arena, a classic thought experiment from Broome. Let's imagine a tiny little society, just two people, and we have to choose between two possible futures for them, two different prospects. Okay, listen closely. In prospect G, there's a 50% chance they both get 2 units of happiness and a 50% chance they both get 1 unit. The key thing here, no matter what happens, they end up equal. Now look at prospect H. Here, there's a 50% chance the first person gets 2 and the second gets 1, and a 50% chance it's the other way around. The key thing here, no matter what happens, they end up unequal. So, which prospect is better? This is it. This is the whole shebang, the question that will definitively separate our two theories. There's really no hiding on this one. All right, let's step into the prioritarian corner first. Remember their rule? You look at each person's fate completely on its own, totally separate from the other person. So let's imagine you are one of these two people. What are your chances? Well, under both G and H, you have the exact same prospect, a 50-50 shot of getting 1 unit of well-being or 2 units. From your individual point of view, it makes no difference which world we choose. Your personal lottery ticket is identical in both cases. Okay, let's look at the math, which for a prioritarian is everything. Because they have to evaluate each person's well-being independently, that's the additively separable rule again, the calculation for the total good is pretty simple. For G, you average the 2 equal outcomes. For H, you average the 2 unequal outcomes. And if you just rearrange the terms, well, you see they're literally the exact same calculation. The math doesn't lie. So the prioritarian has to throw up their hands and say, look, from my point of view, G and H are equally good. Since each individual has the exact same prospects in both scenarios, there's just no reason to prefer one over the other. It's a tie. Case closed. Okay, but now it's time for the egalitarian to step up. And you can bet they see this completely differently. Why? Because they're not just looking at the individual lottery tickets. They're looking at the kind of society these lotteries create. And here's Broome's point again, which is pure egalitarian thinking. In prospect G, they are guaranteed to be equal. In prospect H, they are guaranteed to be unequal. So for an egalitarian who thinks inequality is intrinsically bad, this isn't even a hard question. G has to be better than H. And there's the verdict. For the egalitarian, G is simply better than H. It's not about the individual chances. It's about the guaranteed outcome. G guarantees equality, H guarantees inequality. If you care about equality for its own sake, then G is the only choice. So there you have it. We've heard both sides, and this one simple test case has done exactly what it was designed to do. It's created a clean, permanent, and totally irreconcilable split between these two views. Let's put the final scorecard up. Prioritarianism says G and H are a wash. They're equally good. Why? Because each person has the same individual prospect. But egalitarianism says, no, G is definitely better than H. Why? Because G guarantees equality, while H guarantees inequality. Two completely different starting points, two completely different answers. But John Broome doesn't stop there. He leaves us with this final, kind of sharp challenge aimed right at the prioritarians. He basically asks, is your theory even coherent? I mean, to make their theory work, they need some way to measure a person's well-being that's totally separate from the value of that well-being. And Broome's not sure they can find one. He's saying, if your worldview can't tell the difference between a future of guaranteed equality and one of guaranteed inequality, are you really seeing the full picture? And that's really what this whole showdown boils down to, leaving us with a pretty big question to think about. When we talk about fairness, what do we actually mean? Does only the final outcome for each individual matter? Or does the way we relate to each other along the way count for something too? Is there something valuable about equality itself? This little thought experiment doesn't just separate two theories. It forces us to figure out where we stand too.